He took the hits for her daughter. Now the mother demands him as her mate. The floor under my boots was still shaking when I heard the child scream. I did not think. I did not plan. My legs moved before my mind caught up, and I was already sprinting down the ringway of Threshold Station toward the sound, my heart slamming so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Alarms howled overhead, red light washing over the metal walls, and somewhere behind me, a voice was shouting for everyone to get clear of Block 7. I was already past clear. I was already past careful. My name is Ethan Cole. I am a human engineer on a mining station, built by a species called the Kray-Vashan, tall, scaled, proud people, who had let a handful of humans live and work among them because we were useful, and, more than that, because we were stubborn enough to stay when things went wrong. Things had just gone very wrong. A coolant line had ruptured somewhere in the lower ring, and I could hear metal groaning like a wounded animal. Through the smoke I saw her. A small Kray-Vashan girl, her scales still soft and pale the way a child's are before they harden with age, standing frozen beside a collapsed support beam. Her name was Sela. I knew her. She used to sneak into the supply corridor and steal ration bars from my locker, then leave badly drawn thank you pictures taped to the door. She was not stealing anything now. She was staring up at a wall panel that was about to give way, pieces of broken metal and glass hanging above her like a blade about to fall. I did not have time to think about the right thing to do. I only had time to do it. I threw myself forward and covered her small body with mine, just as the panel gave way completely. Something hit my back, and then my shoulder, and then my side, over and over, sharp and burning, until the pain became one long white noise that swallowed everything else. I remember gripping her tight, curling my body around hers so that nothing more could reach her. I remember her small hands clutching the front of my jacket. I remember thinking, absurdly, that I still owed her a ration bar from last week. Then the world went quiet, and dark, and far away. When I woke up, the light above me was soft, not harsh, and I understood I was in the medical bay. My whole right side throbbed with a deep, steady ache, and when I tried to sit up, someone gently pressed a hand against my chest. It was not a nurse. It was an elder, Kray-Vashan woman, her scales a pale silver that comes with age, her eyes sharp and studying me like I was a puzzle she had not expected to need solving. "You are awake," she said. "Good. You have much to answer for." I blinked at her. Answer for. Not thank you for, not well done. Answer for. "I do not understand," I said, my voice rough. "You saved the commander's daughter," the elder said. "You placed your body between her and death. Among my people, that is not a small favor to be repaid with words. It is a debt. It is called Ashkun, and it does not fall to the child you saved. It falls to the parent who could not protect her." I lay there trying to process that through the fog of painkillers. A debt. Fine. I had grown up with debts. You helped a neighbor move furniture. They brought you dinner. You covered someone's shift. They covered yours. This did not sound like that kind of debt. Not from the way her voice had gone low and careful, like she was warning me about something, rather than explaining it. "What kind of debt?" I asked. The elder studied me a moment longer, as if deciding whether I deserved the truth. Then she said, "The parent whose child you saved is bound to take you as her mate. It is law older than this station. It cannot be waved away with words. It cannot be ignored. If it is refused without proper cause, it brings shame upon her clan for 3 generations." I stared at the ceiling and decided the painkillers were making me hear things. "Say that again," I said. She said it again, slowly, word for word the same. That is when the door opened, and I understood this was not a hallucination. She walked in like the room belonged to her, which, given her rank, it probably did. I recognized her immediately, not because I knew her personally, but because everyone on this station knew her by reputation. Commander Kyra Vosh, decorated in 3 border conflicts, the kind of officer whose name made junior staff stand up straighter without being told to. She was tall even by Kray-Vashan standards, her scales a deep blue that shimmered faintly under the medical lights, and her eyes were the same amber as her daughter's. She stopped at the foot of my bed and looked at me for a long moment without speaking. I could not read her expression. It was not gratitude. It was something heavier, something that looked almost like exhaustion mixed with resolve. "You are the one," she said finally. It was not a question. "I am," I said, because there did not seem to be a point in denying it. "You took wounds meant for my daughter," she said. "She is a child," I said. I was not going to stand there and watch. Something flickered behind her eyes, gone before I could name it. Then she straightened, folding her hands behind her back the way I imagined she stood in front of her own troops. "Among my people," she said, "this act creates a bond that cannot be dismissed. You have incurred Ashkuan. By our law, I am bound to take you as my mate, or the debt festers, and it becomes a shame my clan carries for 3 generations. I do not say this to frighten you. I say this because it is true, and because I intend to honor it." I lay there, half sedated, staring at one of the most respected officers on the station, who had just informed me, without a trace of humor, that saving her daughter's life meant I was now expected to marry her. "You are telling me," I said slowly, "that I got hit by shrapnel protecting a kid, and my reward is that I have to marry her mother." She did not smile. "You say it as though it is a punishment." "I say it as though nobody asked me," I said. That landed differently than I expected. Her jaw tightened, and for a moment she looked less like a decorated commander and more like someone who had just been told something she was not prepared to hear. She did not answer right away. She turned instead and walked out of the room without another word, leaving the elder standing there with an expression somewhere between concern and curiosity. I spent the next 2 days in that medical bed with far too much time to think, and a shoulder that ached every time I moved. The medic, a quiet woman named Priya, who had transferred out from Earth 2 years before me, kept trying to get me to rest instead of asking questions. "You should not be pulling up station archives on a stretcher," she told me on the second day, watching me squint at a data pad propped against my knee. "I need to understand what I am dealing with," I said. "You are dealing with Kravoshan clan law," she said. "Nobody understands that. Not even most Kravoshan understand all of it. It is 500 years of tradition, wrapped in more footnotes than anyone bothers reading anymore." "Then I will read the footnotes," I said. She sighed and left me to it, though she did bring me tea an hour later, which I took as her way of admitting I was not going to stop. It took most of the second day, scrolling through translated texts that had clearly been digitized decades ago and never cleaned up since. But I found something. Buried under generations of case rulings that nobody bothered citing anymore because nobody ever tried to refuse an Ashkun claim, there was a single clause, old and half-forgotten. "The debt may be honored through Kathresh, service and standing offered freely, in which the bonded declares the child kin by choice rather than by compulsion of law." I read it 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. There was another way. Not marriage forced by an ancient rule, but something chosen. Something that did not require either of us to be bound against our will. I asked Priya to help me get discharged early, and she refused. And then I asked again, and she sighed the way people do when they know they have already lost the argument. And by the evening of the 3rd day, I was walking the corridors slowly, one hand pressed against my side, heading toward the observation deck where I had been told Commander Vosh liked to stand when she needed to think. She was there, exactly as described, staring out at the mining fields that stretched endlessly beyond the station's viewport, lit faintly by the distant glow of the system's twin suns. She did not turn when I approached, though I was certain she heard me coming. "You should be resting," she said. "I needed to talk to you," I said. She turned then, and something in her posture had shifted since the medical bay, something more guarded, as if she had spent the last 3 days bracing herself for a conversation she did not want to have. "I am not going to marry you because a law tells me I have to," I said, before she could speak. She stiffened, but I kept going. "I am not saying that to insult you or your people. I am saying it because a bond that starts with force is not a bond. It is an obligation, and I do not think that is what your daughter deserves from either of us." Her eyes narrowed slightly, though she did not interrupt. "But I will tell you what I will do," I continued. "I will watch out for Sela, not because a law says I owe it, because I already decided that the moment I put myself between her and that wall, I found something in your archives, a clause called Kathresh. It says the debt can be honored through service and chosen kinship, not only through marriage. I want to offer that instead. If that is not enough for your clan, then that is your clan's problem to solve, not something either of us should be forced into." For a long moment she said nothing at all. The lights of the mining fields reflected faintly in her eyes, and I could not tell if she was angry, or surprised, or something else entirely. "No one," she said finally, her voice quieter than before, "has answered Ashkun that way in 400 years of record." "I am not big on tradition," I said. She almost smiled at that. Almost. Then her expression sobered again, and she looked back out at the fields. "You do not understand what you are asking," she said. "A commander of my station, refusing a lawful claim in front of her people. There will be questions. There will be pressure from the clan elders. Some will say I am shirking my duty. Some will say you insulted me by refusing." "Did I insult you?" I asked, because that was never my intention. She considered the question seriously, the way I imagined she considered every question that mattered. "No," she said eventually, "you did not insult me. You told me the truth. That is rarer than you think, especially from someone who has just been told he is legally obligated to marry a stranger." We stood there for a while in silence, watching the twin suns catch on distant machinery far below. It was the kind of silence that did not feel uncomfortable, which surprised me more than anything else that had happened in the last 3 days. "Sela asked about you," she said eventually. "Not the law, not the debt. She asked if the human who caught the falling wall would still bring her ration bars." "Tell her I will," I said. "Tell her I already owed her one from last week anyway." This time she did smile, briefly, but it changed her whole face, softened something in her that I had not seen since she walked into the medical bay looking like she was preparing for battle rather than gratitude. "The clan will not be pleased," she said again, though there was less weight behind it now. "You did not refuse anything," I reminded her. "I did. That means no shame falls on you. I simply chose a different path forward, one that does not require either of us to give up our own will. I told the truth. That is all." She studied me for a long moment, the same way I imagined she studied unfamiliar terrain before deciding how to approach it. "Then perhaps," she said slowly, "we will see what grows from choice, rather than what law would have forced." I did not get a forced bond that day, and I did not want one. What I got instead was something that started slowly and honestly, built on nothing but decisions freely made. Over the following weeks, Commander Vosh began appearing more often in the mess hall, taking the seat across from me without announcement, asking about my work on the coolant systems, listening more than she spoke. Sela started leaving better drawings on my locker door, no longer just crude scribbles but careful little pictures of the three of us standing together near the observation deck, her idea of what a family might look like, drawn with a child's fearless optimism. There were tense moments too. A group of clan elders arrived on the station nearly a month later, stern and formal, demanding to understand why their commander had allowed a foreign debt to remain unresolved by traditional means. I sat through that meeting beside her, my shoulders still faintly stiff from healing, and I watched her stand in front of people who had shaped her entire career, and explain, calmly and without apology, that the debt had been honored through Kathresh, through chosen service and chosen kinship, and that no shame belonged to her or her clan, because the choice had been made freely by both of us. One elder, an older man with scales the color of weathered stone, studied me with open suspicion. "And if the human abandons this chosen path," he said, "what then? What protects the child then?" I stood up before Kyra could answer. "If I ever abandon Sela," I said, "it will not be because of a law I was forced to follow. It will be because I stopped being the kind of person who runs toward a falling wall instead of away from it, and I do not think I am going to stop being that person anytime soon." The room went quiet. Kyra looked at me with an expression I still cannot fully describe, something between surprise and something warmer, something that had not been there in the medical bay 3 days after the accident. The elders left eventually, unconvinced perhaps, but unable to argue against a choice that had been made openly, honestly, and without any hidden motive they could point to. Kathresh held. The debt, if it could even still be called that, had been honored in a way none of them expected, and none of them could easily dismiss. Months passed. My shoulder healed fully, though it still aches sometimes when the station's temperature drops too low. Sella grew half an inch, according to her own very serious measurements, marked in pencil on the wall outside my quarters, and she insisted on telling everyone who would listen that I had saved her from a falling wall, though the story grew a little more dramatic every time she told it. Kyra and I never spoke of marriage again, not in the way the old law had demanded. What we built instead came slower, quieter, made of shared meals and long walks along the ringway, and evenings spent watching the twin suns set over the mining fields. It was not something forced upon either of us by ancient text. It was something we chose, piece by piece, day by day, without pressure, and without debt hanging over either of our heads. One evening, nearly a year after the accident, we stood together on the same observation deck, where I had first refused the law that tried to bind us. Sella was asleep in the next room, worn out from a long day helping Priya organize the medical bay's supply shelves, a task she had somehow convinced everyone was extremely important work, suited only to her. Kyra stood beside me, her shoulder nearly touching mine, watching the same view we had watched that first night. "Do you regret it?" she asked quietly. "Refusing the law, I mean." I thought about it honestly before answering, because she deserved honesty more than comfort. "No," I said. "If I had accepted it, I would always wonder if you were only here because you had no choice. This way, I know you are here because you chose to be. That matters more to me than any old law ever could." She turned to look at me then, and there was nothing guarded left in her expression at all. "Then I am glad you were stubborn enough to refuse it," she said. "I am told that is one of my better qualities," I said. She laughed, a real laugh, warm and unguarded, and for a long moment neither of us said anything else. We simply stood there together, watching the twin suns dip below the horizon of the mining fields, two people who had started as debt and duty, and had somehow, slowly, honestly, become something neither of us had a name for yet, and did not need one to know it was real. Some things, it turns out, do not need an ancient law to hold them together. They only need two people willing to choose each other, again and again, one honest day at a time.